Hey, Pro-Life Jen. Today I want to talk a little bit about the FACE Act and the rescue movement and give you my thoughts and a little perspective on pro-life movement history. As you all know, I love history, all things related to history, because I know how much we can learn from appreciating and understanding our history. So I want to have just kind of I guess it's a one-way conversation with you since you can't respond back, but I know you will in the comments, about my thoughts about the FACE Act, about the rescue movement, what rescue is, and what our strategy should be moving forward. Now, I want to preface this with, you can feel free to disagree with me on this. And I want you to feel like that's okay. In the pro-life movement, there have been a lot of tactical disagreements over the years and decades we've been doing this. There were, for years, big disagreements about whether or not abortion victim imagery should be used, and if it should be used, where it should be used, and how it would be most effective. That doesn't change, though, that we're all united in our goal of abolishing abortion, making abortion unthinkable and unavailable. And I think we should be free to disagree and talk about different tactics and strategies. And that's really what the end of Roe versus Wade meant, that we would now have this opportunity to have these important discussions. But I would challenge you that when you see a tactic or strategy in the pro-life movement that you may not agree with or not understand, to try to have a little bit of grace when considering the other person's opinion, that they may have a different experience level than you. They may know something about a personal experience that they have had that you haven't had. And to remember that we are all on the same team, because ultimately our goal is the same. And we may have different strategies and we may have different tactics. And that's okay, because if you look at the history of the suffrage movement, the civil rights movement, and even the abolition movement, the tactics and strategies of all of those activists, their decades of work that led to these critical human rights victories, they weren't all the same. And when you ask historians, who was more effective or what have you, historians will often tell you that all of these different roles or positions or different strategies or tactics actually worked together and were used and woven together to push the ball forward, move the ball forward down the court closer and closer until victory was achieved. So just keep that in mind, because I think sometimes we may have tactical disagreements or not agree with someone's strategy and say, well, I understand your position. But we don't just say that. We say, I don't understand your position and you're not as pro-life as I am. And we have a habit of doing that. And I don't like to lecture to you. I think that's weird. But just keep in mind, because it's something I lecture myself on and that I have to keep in check on myself. So there you go. Okay, so I want to give you a little background on rescues in the FACE Act. So rescues kind of came out. I think the first one was done in 1988. And the idea was to take the 1960s style sit-in that student anti-Vietnam War protesters, anti-nuclear power protesters would use to stop people from, university officials from entering their office, or people from entering the nuclear power plant. Because if you sit in, you have enough people can't go to work. And it creates media attention. People can't go in and do the thing that they were going to do, which you disagree with, okay? That's kind of where the idea of let's do a rescue. Babies are being murdered inside of abortion facilities. Let's physically use our bodies to stop that from happening by not allowing people to go to work, the abortionists who are committing these crimes, the other staff members, and not allowing women to go into these abortion facilities. That was the idea. The first rescue was in Philadelphia. Like I said, I think it was 1988. It might be 1989. This movement became very popular. At the time, there wasn't a lot in the pro-life movement, a lot of grassroots activism happening. You had Nellie Gray, who started the first March for Life in 1974. There were life chains. People and activists started setting up pregnancy centers in communities, but there really wasn't another form of activism. There was some sidewalk counseling happening. It wasn't really organized. There weren't mass trainings or organizations or materials. You kind of had to find your way throughout all of it, okay? So that's how it happened. And it started to grow in popularity. There would sometimes be hundreds of people who would show up in an abortion facility for a rescue that should shut down the abortion facility that day. The thought being lives would be saved, that if you can delay the abortion from even one day, a woman may decide to choose life. And we do know that happened. I've met women who've said that they were going to have an abortion, there was a rescue happening, and then changed their mind. We also know a lot of women, especially as rescue went on, the abortion facilities kind of just got smart with calling the women who are scheduled for an abortion, saying, come this time, we're opening up our clinic this day when no one knows we're opening, and we'll still kill your baby for you. So we know it wasn't 100% effective, but there were lives saved, absolutely. So then you started seeing violence happen. And this is what we have to be careful of. When you tell people generally murder is happening inside an abortion facility, act like it. Some people who don't subscribe to non-violent principles in social movements and who clearly have mental issues don't act very pro-life. And that's what started to happen. You started seeing death threats, bombing attempts on abortionists, some abortionists being shot. Some abortionists were actually killed, which is actually antithetical to being pro-life, just FYI. And so Congress in 1994 decided to take action. They passed something called the Freedom to Access. Hold on, I'll Google it for you. It's like the Freedom to Access Clinics Act. Freedom Access of Clinics Entrances Act. And the goal was to make it so no one could do a sit-in, a rescue of abortion facilities ever again. And if they did, it actually turned kind of like the land in front of an abortion facility into federally protected property, meaning it's a felony, not just like if I would go at Walgreens and do a sit-in. Well, that would be interesting to try because now they're an actual abortion vendor because they distribute chemical abortion drugs. But I'll try another. But if I went to a Walmart and I went to do a sit-in to a Walmart and wouldn't let people into the Walmart, I could be arrested with trespassing and be a misdemeanor. It wouldn't be a felony. And the penalties that Congress put on this law is up to 11 years in a federal penitentiary. 11 years in a federal penitentiary. This pretty much decimated the, sit-in rescue movement. The pro-life movement started asking questions of what more can we do? Maybe there's something else that we can do to intercept women before they go into an abortion facility, which is why you saw the creation of the 40 Days for Life movement, Students for Life of America, Sidewalk Advocates for Life, which came out of 40 Days for Life, which Sidewalk Advocates and 40 Days for Life have a very high turnaround ratio, this is a decision for life, life-saving rates, much higher, I would say, than back in the rescue days because it was harder to even tell. And we know a lot of women went back and rescheduled those. Now, let me just be very clear. I believe the FACE Act is a garbage law and it should be repealed because what it does is it says that blocking an abortion facility is worse than blocking a Walmart. And it basically says it's a greater punishment because it's a thought crime, which I think is very scary and the government should never do, okay? Murder is wrong because you've murdered another human being. There shouldn't be a steeper criminal punishment if you murder a human being because you don't like their race versus just murdering them because you're a jerk. Murder is murder and you should be locked in jail for the rest of your life because you've taken another human life. FACE Act should be repealed. I fully believe that. Do I believe that we should knowingly violate the FACE Act and face 11 years in the federal penitentiary with a 100% pro-abortion Biden administration with a Department of Justice, which we know is intent on silencing the pro-life movement? We all have been tracking the number of vandalizations against churches and pregnancy centers since the reversal of basically nothing happening. Should we do that? I don't actually think we should because I don't think that's the most effective thing we can do to save the most lives. I think I can save a whole lot more lives not spending 11 years in a federal penitentiary. It's a pretty pragmatic view, if you will. And I think, it's one that's shared by many. And so I just wanted to share those thoughts with you. And I have other thoughts that I can share with you, some statistics, but It's pretty sad. We've seen some activists who've knowingly violated the FACE Act. So they, blocked the entrance to an abortion facility. The Department of Justice has not only made sure that they were tried and found guilty of that, but they were taken immediately into custody. There's a number of activists sitting in a jail right now in Alexandria, Virginia, awaiting their criminal sentencing. So we don't know how long they'll be sentenced to prison, but they're in jail waiting for their sentencing. And it's heartbreaking. I know some of these people. It's absolutely heartbreaking for them and their families. And it's hard. I can't imagine what they're going through alone. Some of them are probably in solitary confinement, and I love them, and I hope that they are released. I hope that and I'm working towards ensuring we see a pro-life president elected in 2024 so we can see a pardon of those pro-life individuals who peacefully blockaded the abortion facility. But do I think that we should be en masse calling for pro-lifers to blockade abortion facilities? No. Why? I don't think it's going to work. If you think about the civil rights movement, and I've certainly studied a lot about the civil rights movement and what was done in cities like Birmingham or Selma, it was very strategic. Martin Luther King, the Southern pastors, SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, all the community groups would work together. All the groups fighting for civil rights would try to work together, and they would actually strategically find a certain city that they were going to go and engage in some civil disobedience. And they engaged in a lot of other things. They did trainings and things like that. And there were certain parameters and things they looked for. And the goal was, overwhelm the jail cells, create a crisis of conscience in that city, get that city to the point through agitation that the people, the citizens of that city would demand an end to segregation. They would demand change. But they were very strategic about it. There were hundreds of people involved in the civil discourse and involved in the civil disobedience that happened, the peaceful civil disobedience that happened, that overwhelmed the jail cells, that made this a crisis that could not be ignored in that one community. I don't think that's what's happening here. So I don't think it's a good strategy. It's not that I don't love those and feel tremendous amount of empathy for those who are sitting in an Alexandria jail waiting what could be an 11-year federal penitentiary sentence. And I want them to be released from prison, and I've called for their release. I've called for the repeal of the FACE Act, as has many pro-life leaders. But I would just, when you're thinking through strategies in the post-Roe era, I just want to give you my perspective on this. Like I said at the beginning, you don't actually have to agree with my view. I just wanted you to know what my view is, because I think it's important that we have open conversations. And like I said, this is a very hard conversation to have because I'm having it one way just with you, and I'm not hearing back from you. But I think it's important that pro-life leaders, those of us who have this responsibility of leading the pro-life movement, tell you our why and tell you, why we may think of things the way we think of them. And like I said, you may disagree. That's okay. If we agree, awesome too. But at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. So yeah, I look forward to working to see abortion abolished with each and every one of you. Thank you for all that you do. And let's keep moving forward.